I think that's what's nice in an academic institution is because there's a lot of people coming from different backgrounds, and you are brought by one mission kind of to do science, right? So no matter where you are from, it's the science that brings you together. So it was such a nice feeling that and at that time it wasn't only me. There are a couple of other Filipinos in our department. It's just such a nice feeling that Filipinos are being represented in STEM, even in our small department.
Hi everybody, I am Rox De Leon and this is episode 9 of A Curious Character. It's the first of my two-part conversation with Herdeline Ardoña. In this episode, Herdeline shared her background, motivation for pursuing graduate studies, and some anecdotes of how she navigated her graduate school application in the United States, coming from the Philippines as a chemistry undergraduate student at UP Diliman. Without further ado, let's get started with this episode. Welcome to A Curious Character. I am very excited to be here today with Diggs Ardoña, and I've been looking forward to speaking with you here in the podcast. And today I'm just so excited that we can talk more about your journey of getting into graduate school and hear about tips for Filipinos who want to study in the US as an international student. So, welcome.
No, thanks for inviting me here. It's my pleasure, and I hope that whatever I say will be helpful to to the students in the Philippines.
Awesome. So I thought before we dive into the topic of navigating graduate school as a Filipino, it would be great to hear about your story or your
Mhm.
background, how it's like studying in the Philippines, and what motivated you to go into graduate school right out of undergrad.
Oh, that's gonna be a long story if I tell everything. No, but I guess I can briefly describe my trajectory, and then we can talk
Right.
more about the details. So I finished my bachelor's degree in UP Diliman, in the Institute of Chemistry, so BS Chemistry, and I taught for 1 year in UP as an instructor in the same institute. And afterwards, I moved to Hopkins, Johns Hopkins, for a PhD degree in chemistry. And then I did my postdoc at the Wyss Institute in Harvard for about 3 years. And then now I am at UC Irvine as an assistant professor at Department of Chemical and Biomolecular Engineering. And I should say that my postdoc was not in chemistry. It's in the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, and in the Wyss Institute, and it was more in the area of bioengineering and applied physics. So I guess overall my background was very interdisciplinary. And you asked about motivation. I guess I'm just generally a curious person, and I guess that reflects to the kind of research that I do right now. I think that the complex issues that we have right now in the society should be matched by a more complex approach into research, which involves multidisciplinary training. So yeah, I guess the very root of my motivation for pursuing science was because I had a great female role model early on. My grandmother is a chemical engineer, and at an early stage, I just saw that, oh, it's not impossible to for a female to pursue STEM career. And she's very well respected in our community, and I just really admire her. And until up to this day, I very much look up to her. So I guess that was the yeah, very motivation for me to pursue a
Yeah.
STEM career.
Mm-hmm. And then when did you realize that you wanted to apply for PhD? I'm not sure how is it in chemistry if people
um
would go to masters before going to PhD, but why was the
so
decision?
during my time, um I think it is more common for people well, if they want to pursue graduate programs, It's more common to stay for a little bit in the institute and teach as an instructor, so that the tuition fee for for pursuing a graduate degree would be covered. um, and I guess it's not very popular, the idea of pursuing a PhD. But because I was an instructor and there are other people at that time, other junior faculty at that time who are applying or who are already in the US, I guess that was very helpful, and it made us all aware, at least in those who are instructors, made us all aware that, oh, this is possible. Um, and I guess we saw that it's possible to pursue research in institutions that could really provide us with the necessary equipment and resources. Um, and I guess some of the research topics that we could pursue in the institute are quite limited. I think that in IC at that time, the strong focus was more on natural products. I really early on I really liked to pursue. I knew that I wanted to pursue materials chemistry or biomaterials research, and there's not that many opportunities in the universities back home to do that type of research. So yeah, so I think that those are the factors: the research, and then also because some of my peers are already applying, and some are already in the US and showed us that, oh, you can do this. So
Yeah. Yeah, and realizing that you wanted to apply for PhD, of course, you'd have to paint a timeline of like when to get
oh, for that,
applications and all. Yeah, how
yeah.
was that
So
like?
I think that I actually, when I started as a first year college student, I really wanted to pursue an MD degree. And then I guess later on, I was made aware that I could do an MD PhD program. So I guess I considered it at some point. But then, and I considered it during the time that I realized that I really wanted to do research. And then at some point I was thinking, do I really want to go for an MD PhD program or a PhD program? And this was more of, I guess I was already in my senior year. And in the Philippines, if you are going to pursue an MD program, you have to take the MCAT, right?
Right.
So I did that, or NMAT, actually, NMAT for the Philippines. And then if you're going to apply for MD or MD PhD programs, at least here in the US, you have to take the MCAT. So I took the NMAT, actually. But I realized that I really wanted to do research more than, I guess, being in the clinic.
Right.
Of course, this is a senior undergrad speaking, so I probably don't really have an idea of what's happening on both ends. But I just know that I like research. I was able to get some experience through my undergrad lab at that time. So I guess it wasn't until the first semester of my first year of teaching at Diliman when I knew that, okay, I really want to apply for graduate school. So and I think at that time I thought it was actually kind of late, the decision. I felt like I crammed the applications a bit, because, and we can talk about
Yeah.
more later about the application process. But the deadlines for the schools that I applied to was more on mid to late December, and I didn't start taking the necessary exams until, um, I think, first week of October. So it was cutting it too close. Because September I was also taking the chemistry licensure exam. So yeah, I guess that was
Oh,
the timeline.
yeah.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of things happening during that first semester. You have the boards and then teaching, then
Yeah.
applying
Well,
for graduate school.
so April, at that time we still had the
The old,
academic
yeah,
year.
yeah.
Starting, yeah, the old academic year. So we graduated April 2011, and then the school year started June, and then we were all
Right.
reviewing for the board. September was the chemistry boards, um, and then I think the first one was the chemistry GRE. I think in
Mm-hmm.
October, and then November was the GRE general. Then I think TOEFL as well. Um, but I guess at that time it was enough time
Yeah.
to for the scores to come in and be submitted in the December 15th or late December deadlines. So yeah, I guess that's
Right.
what my first year of teaching looked like.
Yeah.
I kept saying first year of teaching, but I only taught for 1 year in Diliman.
Yeah.
Uh, but
And maybe before we hop onto like when I messaged you, I asked for like a two-part episode, but we can talk about it in this whole conversation. Before
mm,
we talk about like navigating from the perspective of an assistant professor, I know you've learned so much already about the admission process and all. Maybe we can continue with your like journey of when you were applying.
sure.
I think you mentioned before you applied for 5 schools, right? So I'm
Mhm.
curious to learn what your considerations back then in choosing for schools to apply to and why the US.
From a practical standpoint, well, let's start with your the last part of your question.
Right.
Why the US? Um, I think mainly because if I consider other countries might require, I guess, other languages beyond English. So it was just again from a practical standpoint, it's just much easier to assimilate into the culture if the language is not that much of an issue. And I think I'm just based on, I guess, reading about the institutions, I'm just more familiar with the institutions in the US than in other countries. And then I guess another aspect is a lot of my colleagues are applying also in the
Mhm.
US. So um, yeah, and then factors for choosing a school. I was very fortunate that there are some people who applied earlier than us that were kind of giving advice and saying that in grad school you just don't look at the school, but really it should be about the research. And as I told you earlier, in the first place, the reason why I would like to pursue a graduate degree abroad is because of the opportunities, the types of research that can
Mhm.
be done. So a lot of people told me that that should be the priority. Of course, geography can also play a role for some other people. Maybe some people have family members, but at that time, I guess it wasn't very much of an issue for me. It was really finding schools and finding departments. Actually, it's more important to understand um, the research areas that a department can offer and their strengths, and see if that really fits to what you want to do. And I know that a lot of people don't really know from the beginning what they really want to do, but I guess I was also fortunate on that end that I I kind of know what topics I want to pursue. So, um, and then in terms of the type of graduate program, I most of the programs I applied to are in chemistry because it makes
Yeah.
sense. My undergrad degree is in chemistry, but I because I'm interested in biophysical chemistry overlapping with materials chemistry, I there was another program in biophysics. Yeah, it was a longer name, but but the biophysics of it was the one that I was interested in, that I applied to. So yeah, I applied to 5 schools. 4 of them are in chemistry, and then one was a specialized program that involves biophysics.
Yeah. And application process after you submitted it could lead to a lot of anxiety waiting for the results and all.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah. How did you cope with that difficult, time, like spending the Christmas waiting for results?
um, so a couple of factors again. I applied with my other colleagues who are also instructors, so we were kind of patting each other in the back. um, and then the other aspect is that because I'm an instructor, and then there are so many things going on, teaching classes, and so you can just distract yourself
Yeah.
through the job, right? So yeah, yeah. I guess for me at that time it wasn't like a do or die situation. I thought that okay, if I don't get accepted to any
Mhm.
schools this year, I could still try next year, or I could reconsider applying to med schools in the Philippines.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then I guess another practical aspect that I wanna share about the MD versus PhD decision was that um, I guess it's very expensive to pursue medical school in the Philippines. Whereas for if you're a grad student in the US, for example, you can get a stipend. You can live comfortably with that stipend. You don't have to pay for any tuition. At least I can say that most if not all of the chemistry PhD programs in the US, you don't have to pay for anything. Maybe some schools would require you to pay for insurance during the summer or something like that. But the general tuition you don't have to pay for it. So
Mhm. Yeah. And I believe that's usually the case for STEM PhDs, right? When you go to a
yeah,
PhD program, it's usually funded.
for masters,
Mhm.
I think you have to pay. Um,
Right, right.
and
Yeah,
and
although
I also heard that there are some PhD programs in the Europe wherein you need to find a scholarship or you need to find a fellowship.
mhm.
So yeah, that's another factor. I just didn't really consider other schools at that time. I didn't consider other schools beyond the US.
And how did you find out that you got into that to the programs that you applied to? If you still remember that time.
Yeah. um, so I think the very first school I received a snail mail. Um, I I was considered for an early admit. So it was nice
Wow.
because they are offering like like a small relocation package. Of course, it's not called a relocation package, but like travel assistance or something like that. And then the other school was I think it involves the option of visiting the campus, so I did that. And then I will never forget my the way I found out my acceptance to Hopkins, because I thought that it was just a spam email. So um, I think Hopkins was the last school that I learned the acceptance. um, so it was just through email. I think the snail mail from Hopkins, I didn't receive that until I signed the I accepted the offer. But anyway, the email was just um, I think it does say Hopkins acceptance. And then the only body of the message, the email, was all caps, congratulations, and then three exclamation points.
Wow.
And so I thought, like, is this is this legit? But it turns out that the admin assistant in Hopkins chemistry, I think she just turned 80 that year, so she's like she's not the most advanced in terms of like emails and tech. So it was just there was a letter attachment and then congratulations. That's all.
Wow.
And it was like I think 3 a.m. in the Philippines.
Yeah. And I feel like that's
Yeah.
one
So well,
one good thing about receiving acceptance letters from the US, because they would send it during their business hours. So you would wake up with an
with the
admission
good
offer
news,
with the
yeah.
good news.
So yeah, so I guess the short answer to your question is that you can either receive a mail or an email. um, yeah. So I think the rest of the acceptances. was through email, and also the rejections through
Mm-hmm.
email. And then the rejections, I think you won't be able to receive that news until the very end, until they've sent the acceptance letters.
And then
Yeah.
later on, yeah, and then later on, you ended up going to Hopkins for your PhD. And how was that? How was preparing for the big move? Like, did you go to the? So you mentioned you went to the school, visited the schools prior. So
Yeah,
you've been
oh,
to the
just one
States beforehand?
school.
Okay.
Yeah, just one school, and I felt really bad that I went to Hopkins and not to that school, but it was helpful to inform my decision. I think because I was able to see the culture and talk to the people, and I guess find out if the research groups that I'm interested in would be really a good fit for me. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that was very helpful. The you were asking about the move. I guess
Yeah, the move.
um I can talk first about um choosing a school, because that's kind of tied to my preparation to move. Through the visit, and then while I was deciding, I talked to a lot of people, and I met, virtually, some of them virtually, um, some of the Filipino students, PhD students, and those that, I guess, have done their PhD in the US. Yeah, I talked to a lot of people, and that was also very helpful. Learning their experiences, that was very helpful. And then for the preparation, I should say that one of the most helpful person for my move to Hopkins, to the US, was this fifth year graduate student in the same department at that time. She has been very helpful, and up to this day is kind of my life coach. So she she helped me secure my apartment, and
Wow.
she she gave some of her old stuff, like simple things like school supplies. She was like my ate. And I
Yeah.
felt like that was very important because um, I was very young, and as which I'm sure is the same as other um, folks who are moving
Mm-hmm.
to do their PhD. It's a huge move. So I think for me, it was very important to talk to a lot of people, and I was just very thankful that that student, who was like my ate in Hopkins, she was so helpful, and she's very friendly, and she just, you know um, showed me everything in Baltimore, and talked about her experience. And I guess that was the other aspect, is that it's kind of, I heard a lot of scary things about about
Mm-hmm.
Baltimore, and my mother was also very scared for me to move to that area. But because of that student in Hopkins, she kind of assured my mom that no, she just needs to learn where to go, and the campus security is great, and all of those things. So yeah, um, I guess
Was she
moral of the
Fil-
story.
was she a Filipina?
Yeah, she's
Oh,
Filipina,
okay.
and that's how we got connected. I should have said that she was also from UP Diliman, and so yeah. Moral of the story is that it's important to talk to other people, and I talked to a lot of Filipino, so I used my Filipino network. But in most universities, they would give you the contact information of other grad students, so you should take advantage of that as well. So I talked to other grad students via email, and asked about their experience before I came in. So talked to a lot of people. I think that's
Yeah.
what was helpful for me. And
Yeah.
then yeah, I felt that because of that Filipina who helped me a lot when I was adjusting and when I was moving, that was actually a big part of my decision why I well one of the reasons why I chose Hopkins was because I felt like there was a community, and I know she's only one, and it turns out that there are more. I met other Filipinos eventually as years
Mm-hmm.
passed, but we had a very friendly Filipino community. There's not that many students, Filipino students at Hopkins at that time, but yeah, knowing a couple was helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I could resonate with that. Even for my case, when I was applying for my masters, I also knew folks at UC Berkeley who were studying there, and I feel like it really helps give you that push to imagine what it's like to live in a very new environment. And talking to people really helps in making a wise decision or an informed decision of choosing this one school over the other.
Yeah, and I thought it was just helpful to find other Filipinos who are doing PhD programs as well, because you share the same culture, and they know, I guess, your baseline in terms of the academic environment where we are from, and then also the culture. Yeah, so
And I think for this one, you kind of talked to me about this before in our first call about from day one of graduate school, it would help if you know what you want to do. Like if you want to go to academia versus industry, it would help if you know from day one, oh, I want to be a professor, and like
yeah,
yeah,
I just want to clarify. It would help, but it's not
not
necessary.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely,
So
yeah,
if you don't know yet where you want to go in the long term, it's okay. You don't have to be pressured.
yeah,
But if you already know, I think that um, it would just help you curate your training, the opportunities that you're seeking for.
yeah,
And I think yeah, I shared that with you the first time we talked, that
yeah,
from day one I knew I wanted to be a professor.
professor,
I really want to go back home and serve back to my home institution. But I guess as years pass, there are a lot of factors, including family. But I still try to stay active, and connect with people back home. And eventually, hopefully, that there will be more collaborations
right.
that will happen.
So, as a Filipino who got to experience what it feels like to study at one of the top universities abroad or in the world, what would you say are your key takeaways from that whole experience or like realizations?
I guess it's a mix of I was it's a mix of emotions that well, I would say that I guess in a way, you on one hand you feel kind of pressured because you might think that, oh, if I screw this up, maybe they won't accept any more students from my university. But on the other hand, I think it brings so much joy to me that that you feel that I felt that I was representing our culture, and sharing my experiences with the other folks in the department. I think that's what's nice in an academic institution, is because there's a lot of people coming from different backgrounds, and you are brought by one mission kind of to do science, right? So no matter where you are from, it's the science that brings you together. So it was such a nice feeling that and at that time it wasn't only me. There are a couple of other Filipinos in our department. It's just such a nice feeling that Filipinos are being represented in STEM, even in our small department. So, yeah, I guess that was the two ends of the spectrum for me. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's the science that brought me there. So I just tried to do my best, and try to represent the culture in the most positive way that I can.
Right. Yeah. And where did your peers end up going? You mentioned earlier you were applying with your friends back then.
Yeah. So I think most of my friends who applied to the US pursued PhD programs in the US. So yeah, everywhere in the US.
Mm.
And then now there's there's one who's currently applying for a professorship for faculty positions as well. There's another one who also is a faculty now, and then a couple who are in pharmaceutical industries, and then a couple who are still doing their postdocs. Yeah, I think that's where we are right now.
Yeah.
That's where
Yeah,
we are
and
at
I've
right now.
and I found it amazing, really, how you guys managed to navigate that journey in getting into a faculty position abroad and such. Because I've personally found or heard different stories about other international students. They don't know what they're going to do after their PhD or after their research assistantships, and I'm just like
It is
very
a
curious of how you navigated that, entire process. Just very briefly, if you could tell us about that.
it was a long process, but I'll try my best to summarize it. No, I think building your network is very important, and trying to make the most out of the training opportunities that are possible, workshops, conferences, so that you can have a better understanding of the community. And I guess I could only speak for the academic track because I didn't really get a chance to see
Right.
how to apply or like what are the networking opportunities possible for the industry. I guess there are two ways to approach a career. It's either a career in STEM. It's either you're a scientist or you're a careerist. And I
Right.
borrowed that from my postdoc advisor, and I think he borrowed that thought also from one of his career mentors. Anyway, there are folks who build their career trajectory around a scientific goal, and whichever opportunities can give them the biggest opportunity to pursue that, motivated by the career stages. I
Right.
feel like I I lean more towards being a scientist. I know that the types of research that I want to do maybe would be more fit for an academic career, and I really like mentoring.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy mentoring students and also teaching. So um, so yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I know that I wanted at the beginning I wanted to pursue an academic career, and for me to do that, sure you have to finish your PhD, pursue a postdoc, and then apply for academic jobs. That's a traditional career. But I guess in a way, my trajectory is a bit
Yeah.
unconventional because I jumped from different fields,
Right.
and I was just trying to follow the best track that would make me most prepared for building an interdisciplinary lab,
Mm-hmm.
for for pursuing and building a lab about biomaterials, pursuing research on biomaterials. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and maybe in the future, let's see what we can do about having inviting different people from who chose different trajectories, those who went to academia and industry, and just compare and contrast what each trajectory would give everyone. I've seen similar conversations from a U.S. standpoint, and it would be. I thought it would be interesting to have Filipinos talk about what they did because it's more relatable for us.
Mhm. And I guess I should also say that you talk about different trajectories, academia, industry. There's not no one set trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
Every trajectory of one person is unique. There's
Right.
no as cliche as it may sound,
Yeah.
there's no right or wrong career pathway towards an end goal. And yeah, uh, I think that's one thing that I just want to
Yeah.
clarify
Right.
and say
Yeah.
out there. You can be inspired by certain stories
True.
and learn from the mistakes of other people, but what works for you will not work for other people. And I attend those workshops and training opportunities, you would say that sure, but take their advice with a grain of salt, because what worked for them may not work for you.
Right.
And up to this day, I still always think about that. But of course, it's always great to hear more advices from people, and it's your responsibility to just filter which ones would work for you.
Yeah. Exactly. And really the goal of me doing all these podcast interviews and all that is to just provide more stories of what other people did and just
Oh,
give
I
more
think this
samples
is
out there,
awesome.
right? Right? Yeah. It's like we're not really trying to provide instructions of like a one set
Yes, and I'm
recipe of
glad
how
you
to
said that.
succeed. It's more
There's
like,
no
oh,
recipe.
right. Yeah. It's more like, oh, this is what she did, and then this is the what the other person did, and then it's my own responsibility as the listener to, pick certain pieces which I think will be applicable for my case and learn, yeah, as you
Mhm.
said, learn from their mistakes and just get more samples and filter them out
Absolutely.
depending on your model or whatsoever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I should say that, yeah, when I was applying, I didn't really, there were some people that I talked to, gave advice, but I don't really have a clear picture of what's waiting for me on the other side. And it was like that every step of the way. Like when I was applying for postdocs, it was the same. Like I didn't know which trajectory would be the best, or which postdoc position would be the best, for preparation for a faculty position. Um, and I don't know, I just don't think there's a perfect postdoc position to prepare you for a faculty position. It's just that once you make a decision, make the most out of it, and then yeah, you keep making your own track. You keep making your own path, and always finding out. It's always important to find out which ones work for you.
That is it for this chat. If you like this episode or would like to suggest a future topic, let me know by sending me a quick message. I'm always looking for interesting conversations and hope to share more similar stories in the future. My Twitter handle is at rocksalt, that's ROXSALT. You may also send me an email at rocksalt.acc@gmail.com. Thanks for tuning in and see you in the next one.